Hello everyone. Today I've put together 4 stories from different characters for you. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. And now, let's begin.
John Kramer was born into an ordinary middle-class family. His father worked as a mechanic at a small factory, repairing cars and machinery every day, and his mother took care of the household and sometimes earned extra money as a seamstress, sewing clothes for neighbors. From early childhood, John was a very quiet and thoughtful boy who rarely spoke much. While other children played ball, ran around the streets, and shouted loudly, he preferred to spend long hours sitting alone in the corner of the room, carefully building houses, bridges, towers, and even entire small cities with a construction set made of wooden blocks and metal parts. His father noticed the boy's strong interest in building and often brought home various scraps of pipes, nuts, bolts, and wires from the workshop. John liked taking apart old clocks, radios, broken toys, and even old bicycles, then putting them back together piece by piece, usually improving them so they worked better and more smoothly than before. At school, John kept away from noisy groups of children and rarely joined games during breaks. Teachers frequently praised his strong mathematical abilities, his excellent memory, and the high precision of the drawings he created during craft classes. His cardboard models were always among the best in the class: straight walls, correct proportions, and stable structures. As a teenager, John developed a serious and deep interest in engineering. He regularly read thick books on architecture, construction techniques, and mechanics that he borrowed from the local library. In his free time, he helped his father repair different machines in the garage and learned in detail how levers, gears, pulleys, and hydraulic systems worked. After finishing school with good grades, he entered a technical college where he studied civil engineering. He spent many nights working on complex calculations of loads, strength of materials, and detailed building plans. After graduation, he quickly found a job at a construction company and began with small projects such as repairing warehouses, renovating old offices, and fixing damaged roofs. Over the years, John steadily advanced in his career through hard work and attention to detail. He first became a design engineer and later worked as a full architect. His buildings were known for having very strong foundations, practical and convenient layouts, good natural lighting, and the use of inexpensive but reliable materials. Together with a lawyer named Art Blank, whom he had known for many years, he founded a special group focused on urban renewal. They purchased old abandoned factories, warehouses, and unused industrial buildings and converted them into affordable housing for families with low income. Their first major project was an old meatpacking plant that was successfully turned into a large residential complex with dozens of apartments. During this active and successful period of his life, John met Jill Tuck. She operated a small clinic that helped people struggling with drug addiction, offering them support and treatment. John fully supported her work, shared her goals, and even helped with some repairs in the clinic building. They got married and started living together in a modest house. Soon Jill became pregnant, and they were expecting a son whom they planned to name Gideon. In his home workshop, John carefully built a wooden marionette doll with movable parts as a future gift for the child, spending many evenings perfecting every joint and detail. One evening, a desperate drug addict broke into Jill's clinic looking for money or drugs and violently struck her in the stomach during the struggle. As a result, she lost the baby. This tragedy deeply affected John and changed him forever. He became distant, spoke less, and began to blame not only the attacker, but also many other people in society who wasted their lives through weakness, bad habits, and irresponsible behavior. The marriage gradually fell apart over time. Jill continued working at the clinic, trying to help other patients every day, while John lived alone with a growing sense of emptiness and disappointment inside. John continued his professional work for some time, but he found less and less meaning in designing ordinary buildings. His body started to weaken noticeably. He began to experience constant fatigue and pain in his abdomen. After several medical examinations, doctors diagnosed him with advanced colon cancer that had already spread with metastases and included a tumor in the frontal lobe of his brain. The proper treatment started too late because of an error with his medical scans. John underwent several difficult courses of chemotherapy and became extremely thin, pale, and physically weak, losing a lot of weight. The insurance company, where important decisions were made by a man named William Easton, refused to cover the high cost of experimental treatment abroad, saying it was not justified according to their calculations. John sat alone for many hours in his empty house, surrounded by old blueprints and building models, often staring silently at the unused crib he had prepared earlier for his son. One night, feeling desperate, he got into his car and deliberately drove it off a high cliff. The vehicle crashed heavily at the bottom. A sharp piece of metal pierced his side. John lost consciousness for some time, but later woke up in severe pain, bleeding, and managed to crawl out of the wrecked car onto the cold ground with great effort. Despite the advanced cancer and serious injuries from the crash, he somehow survived. After this terrible accident, John's thinking changed significantly and permanently. He decided to use his engineering knowledge to create special traps for people who, in his opinion, wasted their lives, including drug addicts, swindlers, cowards, liars, and those who caused harm to others. Using his skills, he designed various complex mechanisms that included chains, rotating saws, time limits, and masks equipped with sharp spikes. He observed the victims through hidden cameras as they faced the real danger of death and either fought desperately to survive or failed completely. Some people passed the difficult tests and later changed their behavior for the better, becoming more responsible. Others did not survive. From those who failed, he sometimes removed a small piece of skin shaped like a puzzle piece, as a permanent mark of their missing will to live. Over time, several survivors of his tests joined him as helpers and assistants, believing in his idea. However, John always remained the main designer and unquestioned leader of the group. He lived and worked secretly in abandoned buildings that he himself had once designed many years ago, surrounded by piles of metal parts, tools, wires, and technical drawings. His disease continued to progress steadily and painfully, but he refused to stop and kept creating new mechanisms one after another, improving every detail. In his final days, John lay almost motionless in one of his secret hideouts. His body barely obeyed him anymore. Breathing was difficult, and he could hardly move, but his mind remained surprisingly clear and focused until the end. He often thought in silence about his childhood when he built things with construction sets, about the happy family life he had lost, and about the son he had never been able to meet or hold. He did not consider himself a murderer. Instead, he saw himself as an engineer who tested the true will of people to live and appreciate life. As long as any spark of life remained in him, John continued designing and improving his traps until the very last moments.
In the quiet, fading industrial town of Kingston Falls, where old factories stood silent and the streets emptied early in the evening, lived a brilliant but reclusive scientist named Seth Brundle. Seth Brundle had been cursed with severe motion sickness since childhood. Any ride in a vehicle, swing on a playground, or even a quick head turn could trigger violent nausea. While other children moved freely through the world, young Seth remained motionless for long periods, his keen mind quietly obsessing over ways to defeat physical limitations and the tyranny of distance. This fixation never left him. As an adult, he rented a huge abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Kingston Falls and turned it into a chaotic temple of science. Towers of computer equipment, snaking cables, prototype generators, and two gleaming telepod chambers dominated the space. For years, Brundle had labored in isolation to perfect teleportation technology capable of breaking matter into raw data, transmitting it instantly, and reassembling it flawlessly. Inanimate objects teleported without issue. Living creatures proved far more difficult. The first baboon test ended in horror. The animal materialized inside out, its organs fused and bones shattered. Brundle spent weeks rewriting genetic recombination algorithms. On the second attempt, the baboon emerged completely healthy, alert, and even more energetic than before. Success tasted sweet. He invited journalist Veronica Quaife, who had come to the small town to cover his eccentric experiments, to witness the breakthrough. Their professional collaboration soon blossomed into a passionate romantic relationship that gave Brundle a new sense of vitality. Buoyed by triumph and celebration, Brundle decided the time had come to test the system on himself. Late one night in the dimly lit warehouse on the edge of Kingston Falls, he entered the sending pod. A common housefly slipped in unnoticed just before the door sealed. The telepods roared to life. Both bodies dissolved into swirling streams of genetic information, fused together at the deepest molecular level, and were reconstructed in the receiving chamber. When the door opened, Brundle stepped out looking almost unchanged, yet he felt profoundly reborn, stronger, faster, sharper, and finally free of his lifelong motion sickness. The following days were euphoric. Newfound strength surged through his muscles. He leaped across the laboratory with acrobatic grace, scaled walls effortlessly, and worked for days without sleep. His stamina and sexual drive reached extraordinary levels. He and Veronica shared intense, almost animalistic intimacy. Brundle believed the teleportation process had perfected him, purging every flaw from his body. He pushed the telepods toward even greater refinements, dreaming of a future where humanity would transcend all physical boundaries. Cracks in this dream appeared gradually. Coarse black bristles began pushing through the skin on his back and shoulders. His appetite exploded. He consumed enormous amounts of sugar and sweets. One evening, while eating, he suddenly vomited a stream of powerful digestive enzymes onto his plate, liquefying the food into a thick, nutritious sludge that he then sucked up. The process both fascinated and unsettled him. He recorded every symptom with clinical precision. The transformation gathered terrible momentum. His fingernails turned black and fell away. Teeth began dropping out in clusters. Large patches of human skin peeled off, exposing raw, glistening insect exoskeleton underneath. One arm swelled dramatically, twisting into a massive, powerful claw covered in chitin. His face distorted, eyes bulged and developed thousands of tiny facets. His jaw pushed forward, forming a fleshy proboscis. Speech grew thick and difficult. A constant low, buzzing vibration resonated from deep within his chest. Brundle's remaining human intellect fought hard. He captured another housefly and attempted a desperate second teleportation, hoping the system could separate the fused DNA strands. The experiment only worsened the fusion. Primal insect instincts flooded his mind. He began spending long hours in the darkest, warmest corners of the warehouse. He moved on all fours with increasing frequency, his gait becoming jerky and insect-like. He could cling to walls and ceilings for hours, and small wing buds on his back slowly strengthened. Veronica remained near him as the horror unfolded, torn between love and fear, even as the warehouse on the edge of the small town became a place of nightmares. Brundle's ears shriveled and detached. More flesh sloughed away in large rotting pieces. His remaining human arm weakened, while the clawed limb grew dominant and terrifyingly strong. He developed the ability to leap great distances and achieve short, buzzing flights across the vast space. In the final stages, Brundle constructed an enormous cocoon-like structure in the center of the warehouse using thick, sticky secretions from his mutated glands. Inside this grotesque, pulsating pod, his body underwent its most violent metamorphosis. When the creature finally tore its way out, almost nothing of Seth Brundle remained. Brundlefly stood nearly 2 meters tall, hunched and powerful, armored in dark chitin plates and coarse bristles. A long, dripping proboscis extended from its face. Huge compound eyes dominated its head. Powerful hind legs enabled immense leaps, and fully developed wings allowed sustained flight. The laboratory had become a nightmarish nest. Walls and floors were coated with layers of slime, webbing, and discarded flesh. The telepods still hummed in the background. Driven by deep insect urges mixed with the last desperate sparks of human intention, Brundlefly captured Veronica. Upon discovering she carried his unborn child, the creature dragged her toward the telepods, intending to fuse all 3 genetic codes: its own heavily mutated DNA, Veronica's, and the developing fetus, believing the result would create a perfect new being. In the violent struggle, Veronica fought desperately. Brundlefly accidentally activated one of the telepods while trying to force her inside. His body was caught in the transmission field and fused with the metal and wiring of the machine itself. The result was even more horrifying. From the receiving pod emerged a grotesque, half-mechanical monstrosity, a twisted fusion of insect flesh, human tissue, cables, and shattered metal. The creature screamed in unbearable agony, barely able to move, leaking blood, slime, and oil across the floor. In its final moments, faint traces of Seth Brundle's consciousness surfaced, begging for release. Veronica, shaking with terror and grief, picked up a pistol from the floor of the warehouse. She fired again and again into the writhing, broken body. After the last gunshot echoed through the empty building, Brundlefly finally fell still. The exact origin of SCP-096 is still completely unknown. The Foundation has no records about where this creature came from, how it was born, or how long it had been living in the world before it was discovered. Everything began in a very cold and isolated mountain area deep in Canada. For some time, local people had been mysteriously disappearing. Those who managed to survive told frightening stories about a tall, pale white figure that stood motionless in the snow and made quiet crying sounds. When the Foundation received these reports, they decided to investigate and send a capture team. 2 helicopters flew to the location along with a group of well-armed personnel and 1 doctor. From high in the air, the team spotted the creature. It was standing completely still in the middle of a snowy field, even though the temperature was far below freezing. The creature did not seem to feel the cold at all. The helicopters landed a safe distance away, and the team began to move toward it very carefully on foot. They planned to cover its head with a special thick bag so no one would see its face. But at the worst possible moment, one of the doctors accidentally looked directly at SCP-096's face. He shouted loudly for everyone to turn away immediately, but it was already too late. Several other team members turned their heads toward the shout and also saw the face. SCP-096 reacted instantly. It started crying with a loud, painful voice and screaming in a way that no one had ever heard before. Its whole body began shaking violently from rage and distress. Just 1 minute later, the creature lost control completely and attacked the team with unbelievable speed and power. The soldiers started shooting with their rifles and heavy machine guns. Grenades exploded right next to it. They even fired a powerful anti-tank weapon straight at its body. Half of SCP-096's torso was completely blown away, and pieces of its flesh flew across the white snow, but its bones remained perfectly intact. The creature did not slow down even for a second. It kept moving forward and attacking without any mercy. One by one, the team members were torn apart by its long arms. It grabbed them, killed them quickly, and ate their bodies right there on the snow. The once white ground quickly became red with blood. Only the team leader survived that day. He was extremely lucky. When the others saw the face, he happened to be looking in the opposite direction and managed to turn away in time. In a later interview, he spoke in a very quiet and shaken voice. He said he had never heard such a horrible, heartbreaking scream in his entire life. He watched his friends and teammates die one after another while the creature continued its attack as if nothing could stop it. In the end, the few remaining survivors worked together and finally managed to pull a thick black bag completely over SCP-096's head, covering its face. The moment the face was hidden, the creature suddenly became calm and quiet. It stopped fighting, allowed them to tie its hands, and did not resist when they loaded it onto the helicopter. That was how SCP-096 was captured and brought to the Foundation for the first time. After the capture, SCP-096 was placed inside a very strong steel cell with no windows and no cameras inside. For some time, everything stayed under control and quiet, until one day the most terrible incident in its history occurred. It all started because of one old photograph. Many years before the creature was captured, a middle-aged mountain climber went on a trip to those same cold mountains. He took many pictures of the beautiful snowy landscapes. In one of those photos, far away in the background, just a few tiny pixels accidentally captured the face of SCP-096. That photograph had been hanging on the wall in the man's house for many years. He looked at it every day, but never noticed those small pixels in the corner. One ordinary day, a Foundation researcher was checking old files and found this photograph. He decided to zoom in on the image to see the mountain scenery more clearly. When he enlarged the picture and clearly saw the pixels showing SCP-096's face, the creature inside its cell reacted immediately. At first, SCP-096 began to cry very quietly. Then the crying grew louder and louder until it turned into a terrifying, painful scream that echoed through the entire facility. The creature covered its face with both hands and started hitting the walls in complete panic and rage. The staff understood right away what was happening and sounded the alarm as fast as they could. But there was almost no time left to react. SCP-096 attacked the thick steel wall of its cell with enormous force. The heavy metal began to bend and twist like thin paper. The creature kept pulling, hitting, and tearing the wall with its bare hands. Security cameras outside the cell recorded how the steel slowly broke and bent outward under its power. Finally, SCP-096 tore a huge hole through the wall and escaped from containment. Once free, it started running across the desert at a speed faster than 100 kilometers per hour. Its only goal was to find and reach the man who had taken that old photograph many years ago. On its way, the creature crossed a busy highway. Several drivers and people walking along the road accidentally saw its uncovered face. This created a terrible chain reaction. Every new person who saw SCP-096 became a new target that it had to kill. The Foundation immediately sent every available security team to stop it. They used sleeping gas, heavy machine guns, and even attacks from helicopters flying above. But nothing seemed to work. Bullets simply bounced off its body. Explosions caused almost no damage. SCP-096 ignored all the attacks and kept running straight toward its targets without slowing down. It tracked down every single person who had seen its face and killed them one by one. Each time it completely ate the body, leaving nothing behind. No bones, no clothes, nothing at all. In the end, after many hours, SCP-096 reached the original target, the mountain climber from the old photograph, and killed him too. Only when every last person who had seen its face was dead did the creature suddenly stop its rampage. It stood still for a moment, then calmly turned around and walked back to its destroyed cell on its own, as if the entire horrible event had never happened. After this massive and terrifying escape, the doctor who was responsible for SCP-096 wrote a strong request to the leaders. He asked them to destroy the creature immediately because he believed that even one accidental look at its face or one old photo could cause thousands of deaths and possibly the end of the world. The highest leaders of the Foundation reviewed the request and approved the order to destroy SCP-096. To this day, it is still not fully known whether the creature was successfully destroyed or not. SCP-096 remains one of the most dangerous and frightening objects ever contained. The biggest threat comes from something as simple as seeing its face for even a split second. One careless moment can quickly turn into a complete nightmare. That is why the most important and strict rule is, never look at SCP-096's face.
In a quiet corner of a provincial town where dusty roads met green hills, there lived a man named William Afton. Tall, lean, with a sharp gaze and a slight limp that appeared after long hours of work, he always stood out among others. His hands, covered in small scars from metal and wires, could work miracles with mechanisms. From an early age, William was fascinated by engineering, assembling complex devices from whatever parts he could find, and this passion defined his entire future life. He met a man who shared his vision, Henry Emily. Together, they founded a company meant to bring joy to children. Their first creation was a family restaurant featuring animatronics. 2 springlock suits, one in the form of a golden bear, the other a golden rabbit, allowed a person to wear them and perform among the visitors. William personally handled the mechanics, improving joints and adjusting springs so the suits could move smoothly and safely. Henry focused more on design and the soul of the performances, while William concentrated on control and technological perfection. Afton had a family, a wife and 3 children. The eldest son, Michael, a younger son who was often seen crying in fear of the mechanical beings, and a daughter, Elizabeth, full of life and curiosity. The Afton house stood near the restaurant, and the children grew up surrounded by prototypes of animatronics. William spent a lot of time in his workshop, building new characters and testing their movements. He saw something greater in the machines than mere entertainment. In them lay the possibility of surpassing nature and preserving what usually slips away. The restaurant flourished. Crowds of visitors came to see the singing bear, rabbit, fox, and chicken. William managed the finances, maintained order, and personally checked every detail. But inside him, unease grew. Death seemed to him an unfair inevitability that took away everything created. He began to study how mechanics could interact with life, how to preserve consciousness beyond the body. The experiments started unnoticed. Observations of animals, tests on tissue reactions, attempts to capture the moments when energy left the organism. Tragedy struck the family unexpectedly. The younger son, who had always been afraid of animatronics, found himself in a dangerous situation during a celebration. His older brother and his friends, teasing him, pushed the boy too close to one of the suits. The jaws closed, and the child did not survive. William stood aside, watching life slip away. This loss broke something inside him. He did not blame only chance. In his mind, the idea strengthened that the technology they had created with Henry had failed. But instead of abandoning the ideas, Afton delved into them even deeper. Elizabeth, his daughter, was drawn to the new animatronics built in a secret underground laboratory. One of them, a circus baby with an ice cream, was especially dangerous. William knew this, but allowed events to take their course. The girl came too close, and the machine carried out its hidden program. Her body disappeared inside, and her consciousness, as it seemed to her father, remained linked to the mechanism. This loss intensified his obsession. Now William saw children not just as innocents, but as a key to the mystery of immortality. Life force that could be captured and preserved. He began to act in secret. In the restaurant, where children gathered around bright figures, William put on the golden rabbit suit. His tall figure in the furry outfit looked friendly. He lured small visitors into the back rooms where no one could see. 5 children once followed him. He hid their bodies inside the animatronics so the traces would disappear. The spirits did not leave. They possessed the machines, making them move at night with a thirst for revenge. Suspicion grew. The restaurant closed, and the company suffered losses. William created a new branch, his own laboratory with animatronics capable of capture. The circus gallery became a place of experiments. Technicians disappeared, children went missing. He observed how remnant, the remains of life energy, collected in special containers. This substance allowed machines to remember and move even after breakdowns. Afton began to see himself as a scientist standing on the threshold of a great discovery. Death no longer frightened him as much. Michael, the eldest son, survived and tried to resist. He descended into the underground complexes where his father conducted tests. William even used him to verify his work. The family was falling apart. His wife faded into the shadows, unable to withstand the atmosphere of the house full of mechanisms and secrets. Afton continued working. He returned to abandoned halls where the spirits of the children pursued him. Once, cornered in the safe room, he put on the old springlock rabbit suit to hide. The springs, weakened by moisture and time, activated. Metal pierced his body, crushed his bones. Blood mixed with the fur, but consciousness did not fade. It merged with the suit, turning William into Springtrap, a walking nightmare of rust and decay. Now he existed in the twilight, pursuing those who approached his legacy. The company was reborn under new names, but Afton's traces remained. He manipulated from the shadows, using digital copies of his consciousness and viruses and programs. Years passed in cycles of resurrection and fall. Fires destroyed buildings, but Afton emerged from the ashes. His body, fused with metal, moved with difficulty, but his will remained iron. He watched new generations of animatronics, secretly improving them and adding capture functions. In abandoned pizzerias, underground bunkers, and virtual spaces, everywhere his presence was felt like a cold gaze from the darkness. His story is a path from a man with ideas to a monster in metal, from a family father to a taker of lives. From an engineer to one who merged with his creation forever. In dark halls where music plays again and again, William Afton continues his work. He waits, he watches, and he always returns.
Thanks for watching the video until the end. Leave a like, subscribe, and bye everyone.